The GTX 1660 Ti was released in early 2019. It uses the Turing architecture, just like the 2000 series, but lacks hardware support for ray tracing and DLSS. It comes with 6GB of GDDR6 memory, a 192-bit bus, and 1536 CUDA cores. At launch, MSRP was $280. Nowadays, the price for used ones ranges from $80 to $100. Quick reality check before benchmarks. According to the latest Steam hardware survey, the most popular resolution by far is still Full HD. It used by over 55% of systems. Quad HD is in second place, just under 20%, and 4K is at only 4.5%. So even this already tells us how many people actually need those new GPUs, which being marketed for 4K gaming with extreme upscaling and frame generation. Still, let's look at some actual benchmarks. For testing, I used my workstation PC with a stock Ryzen 5700X. I removed 2 of the 4 RAM sticks, leaving 32GB at 3100 MHz. Not a dream machine by today's standards, but modern enough for this GPU. I tried to pick a variety of games in terms of genre and system requirements, something either popular, new or demanding, or ideally all three of that at the same time. Apex Legends, Full HD and nearly maxed out settings. The system delivers very solid frame rates above 100 FPS, often even over 120. There were occasional dips to 80, but that's an exception. At Quad HD, with shadows and volumetrics lowered, it still manages 100–120 FPS throughout the match. GTA 5. Not new, but still hugely popular title. It recently got a ray-traced update, which I'll touch on in a bit. In the old standard version, which is called Legacy Edition now, with near max settings and 4x MSA at Full HD, it runs well over 100 FPS, which is not surprising considering its age. At Quad HD I lowered MSA to 2x, and still got playable 80–90 FPS. In March of 2025, the enhanced version was released with ray tracing and other graphical updates. Interestingly, the settings menu is now about half the size of the old one. On the GTX card, ray tracing doesn't work, and I left upscaling off. With the high preset, frame rates dropped to around 100 FPS instead of 120 in the Legacy Edition. Lowering settings to just high gives us 120–130 FPS. At Quad HD, the game still runs comfortably at 80–90 FPS. GoW Ragnarok. Technically it was released on PlayStation 4 in 2022, but only came to PC at late 2024. So it's both a recent game and the last-gen title. It auto-selected medium settings and at Full HD delivers comfortable 60 FPS, sometimes peaking at 70 and occasionally dipping to 50. But the game designed with gamepad in mind and 30 FPS cap on older consoles, it feels smooth enough. Cyberpunk 2077. Released in 2020, it still can be used as a benchmark. At high preset I got from 45 to 50 FPS, which is decent considering how demanding it is. But to get a little bit more, I turned off some light and shadow settings. That gave a nice 10 FPS boost in the test scene. In open world, that translated to 55–60 FPS, even reaching 63 at times. No stuttering or unplayable moments. Expedition 33. A brand new title with amazing design but suspiciously high requirements. On low settings at Full HD it only manages 40–50 FPS. The visuals are great, but it feels more demanding than the streets of Cyberpunk for some reason. On medium settings we're getting around 30 FPS with dips to 28. Using TSR upscaling, which is from Unreal Engine and not tied to any video card brand, at 80% resolution frame rate jumps to 40–50 FPS. The image is softer, but it seems like the game was designed to be played with upscaling, because fine details like grass and hair looks too sharp without it. Counter-Strike 2. Game offered high preset with 4x MSA by default, so I went with it. This is the most competitive game in today's lineup, and my system's RAM and CPU speed hold it back from esports tier performance. But that's fine. In both matches performance was solid, 150–180 FPS on average, peaking at 200, and the lowest result was around 120 FPS. Doom: The Dark Ages. A game that shouldn't even run on this card. It requires 8 GB of RAM and mandatory ray tracing. Yet it does launch! On minimum settings at Full HD I expected maybe 10 FPS, but it actually runs at 45–46. Ray tracing is used for local lighting calculations here, so without it some areas are very dark, but I would say that it fits the style and doesn't hurt gameplay much. With FSR in quality mode you can get up to 60 FPS. On balance mode around 70 even. Not bad for a brand new title meant for much stronger hardware. For comparison, previous Doom Eternal runs at 90 FPS on Ultra with no upscaling. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Cautiously started at minimum settings in Full HD. It is a very demanding game after all. In the first mission in the castle I got from 80 to 90 FPS, in open fields a little bit less, 70 to 80. Technically not bad, but visually though, it looked like Oblivion without remaster. Objects and textures lose details very quickly with increasing distance. Playable of course, but not great. On high settings visuals improved dramatically. Fire, fog, volumetric lighting, it's very nice. But draw distance still suffered a bit. Framerate was mostly between 40 and 50 FPS, sometimes hitting 60. Alan Wake 2. It suggested medium settings with upscaling, but I disabled it because I was very inspired of previous test and thought it wouldn't be necessary. Reality hit hard. FPS dropped below 30, sometimes down to 25 FPS. It's cinematic, but rough. Disabling reflections and ambient occlusion helped, raising FPS counter to 35-45, but the game lost a lot of atmosphere. I went back to medium settings with FSR in quality mode. It looked a bit blurry, but acceptable. In this game, light, fog and reflections matter more than raw sharpness. Framerate hovered between 40 and 50, so if you want to play Alan Wake 2 on 1660 Ti, then medium settings plus FSR in quality mode is the way to go in my opinion. Space Marine 2. I started with medium preset, Full HD and no upscaling. Given the scale and amount of details in this game, I wanted to say that 30 to 40 FPS is not awful, but it's clearly not ideal. On low settings we gain about 10 extra frames per second, but again the overall atmosphere takes a big hit. Of course it's still a Warhammer, and after a few minutes you stop noticing the blurry textures and toned down explosions. But to me, Doom on minimum settings feels better than Space Marine 2. So let's try medium settings again, but with FSR in quality mode. Now game runs at 50 to 60 FPS, sometimes dipping to 45. It's another case where I would prefer using FSR before lowering settings. Overall, I expected much worse from this card, really. I thought we would be stuck with low settings at Full HD most of the time. But no, gaming on the 1660 Ti is surprisingly comfortable, unless you're aiming for 4K 120 FPS. Of course, I get the appeal of not having to tweak settings at all, or the desire to get the full graphic experience with the best fog, shadows, lighting effects and distant textures. The 1660 Ti is not a panacea in that case, and switching to an RTX 3070 or 4060 would be a noticeable upgrade. But now it's far from obsolete and still a very usable GPU. That's all for today, thanks for watching, see you next time!